Welcome back, friend. Tonight, we return to the journey of Hercules as he continues his 12 labors. Make yourself comfortable, let your breathing slow, and allow yourself to drift into the ancient world where heroes walked beneath the same stars we see tonight. This is the story of the 10th labor, the cattle of Geryon. By now, Hercules had traveled to the furthest reaches of the known world. He had faced the Nemean lion in dark caves, battled the many-headed hydra in fetid swamps, and chased the golden hind across mountains and valleys for an entire year. He had cleaned the Augean stables, driven away the Stymphalian birds, captured the Cretan bull, tamed the man-eating mares of Diomes, and retrieved the golden belt of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. Each labor had taken him further from home, deeper into the realm of myth and wonder. And now King Eurystheus, sitting comfortably in his palace at Turin's, commanded Hercules to journey beyond the setting sun itself, to the very edge of the world, where ocean met sky in an endless embrace. There, on an island called Erytheia, grazed the magnificent red cattle of Geryon, a fearsome giant who possessed 3 bodies joined at the waist, 3 heads, 6 arms, and 6 legs. The king wanted these cattle brought to him, though he knew the task might be impossible even for the mighty Hercules. Hercules prepared for this journey as he had for all the others, with careful thought and steady resolve. He gathered provisions, checked his weapons, and set his face toward the west, where the sun descended each evening into unknown lands. The road would be long, longer than any he had yet traveled, and the dangers more strange and wonderful than those of familiar Greece. He walked for days, then weeks, crossing lands where the people spoke in unfamiliar tongues and worshipped gods he had never heard of. The landscape changed gradually beneath his feet. The olive groves and rocky hills of Greece gave way to endless plains, then to forests of trees that grew taller than any he had known. Still, he walked westward, following the path of the sun. The journey itself became a kind of meditation, one foot then the other, the rhythm of walking, the steady progress across the earth. Hercules found his mind growing quieter as the miles accumulated. The anger that had driven him to commit the terrible deed that led to these labors, the rage that still sometimes flared in his chest like embers, began to cool in the face of such vastness. The world was so large, and he was just one man walking through it, trying to find his way home to peace. After many weeks of travel, Hercules reached the place where Europe met Africa, where a narrow strait of water separated 2 continents. Here, according to the stories, lay the gateway to the outer ocean, the path to the island of Erytheia. But the mountains on either side of the strait seemed impassable, rising steep and forbidding from the water's edge. Hercules looked at these mountains for a long time. Another man might have sought a ship or searched for a way around. But Hercules was the son of Zeus, and he possessed strength beyond mortal measure. He decided to mark his passage in a way that would last forever. With his bare hands he pushed against the mountains themselves, forcing them apart, creating a permanent passage between the seas. These became known as the Pillars of Hercules, standing to this day as monuments to his journey. On one side, the Rock of Gibraltar. On the other, the mountains of North Africa. Between them, the strait where Mediterranean waters meet the vast Atlantic. Even this tremendous effort did not tire Hercules unduly. His strength was not merely physical but spiritual, drawn from some deep well within him that never quite ran dry. He sat for a while between the pillars he had created, watching the waters flow back and forth, mixing and mingling, neither see quite what it had been before. There was something peaceful in this, in the changing of things, in the slow transformation of the world. But the island of Erytheia still lay far to the south and west, out in the great ocean beyond the strait. Hercules needed a way to cross those waters. For days he walked along the shore of Africa, feeling the sun beat down upon him with increasing strength. The heat was tremendous, almost unbearable even for him. The sand seemed to shimmer and dance. The air itself felt thick and heavy. Finally, in a moment of frustration, Hercules drew his bow and shot an arrow toward the sun, as if he might wound the blazing chariot of Helios himself. It was a bold gesture, perhaps foolish, but Hercules had never been known for restraint. To his surprise, the sun god Helios was not angered by this challenge. Instead, he was amused and impressed by the hero's audacity. Few mortals would dare to shoot arrows at the heavens. Helios appeared before Hercules in a shimmer of golden light, his face bright but not unkind. "You have spirit, son of Zeus," Helios said, his voice warm as summer noon. "I have watched you on your journeys, laboring to purify yourself, to work off the debt of your past deeds. Your persistence has not gone unnoticed. Tell me, where do you journey with such determination that you would shoot at the sky itself?" Hercules explained his quest, his need to reach the island of Erytheia and return with the cattle of Geryon. Helios nodded slowly, understanding. "That is a difficult task," he said. "Geryon is no ordinary monster and his island lies far from any shore, but I am disposed to help you. Each night, when I have finished my journey across the sky, I sail back to the east in a golden cup that floats upon the ocean. I will lend you this cup to cross the waters. Use it well and return it when you are done." And so Helios gave Hercules his golden cup, a vessel large enough to hold a man and fashioned from gold that never tarnished, never corroded in the salt spray. Hercules climbed into this miraculous boat and pushed off from the shore. The cup rocked gently on the waves, perfectly balanced, responding to his slightest movement. As he drifted away from land, the waters beneath him changed from the green of shallow coastal seas to the deep, mysterious blue of the open ocean. The journey across the water was peaceful in a way Hercules had not expected. There was nothing to do but float, carried by currents known only to Helios, guided by forces beyond his control or understanding. Hercules, who had always relied on strength and action, learned something about surrender on that journey. Sometimes, the hero must simply trust, must simply allow himself to be carried. Days passed in gentle rhythm. The sun rose and set. Stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. Dolphins sometimes leaped alongside the golden cup, their sleek bodies breaking the surface in graceful arcs. Once, a whale surfaced nearby, its great eye regarding Hercules with what seemed like ancient wisdom before it descended again into the depths. The sea was vast and full of life, and Hercules felt small upon it but not afraid. There was something humbling and right about this smallness. At last, as the sun began to set on the third day, Hercules saw land rising from the sea, the island of Erytheia. It was a green and pleasant place, hills rolling gently down to white beaches, meadows filled with flowers. And grazing on those meadows were the cattle of Geryon, their coats shining red as garnets in the evening light. There were hundreds of them, the most beautiful cattle Hercules had ever seen, moving peacefully through the grass, utterly content in their island paradise. Hercules guided the golden cup to shore and stepped onto the beach. The sand was soft beneath his feet. The air smelled of salt and flowers. For a moment it seemed too peaceful to disturb, but he had come too far to turn back now. He began walking toward the grazing herds. Before he had gone far, a massive dog came bounding toward him. This was Orthrus, the two-headed hound, brother to Cerberus who guarded the gates of the underworld. Each head snarled and snapped, showing teeth like daggers. The beast was fierce and loyal, bred to guard these cattle against any thief. Hercules felt no particular malice toward the dog. It was simply doing what it had been born to do, protecting what it loved, but he could not allow it to stop him. As Orthrus lunged, Hercules met the creature with his great club, a weapon he had carved from an olive tree during his first labor. One swift blow, and the two-headed dog fell silent, its duty ended. The cattle barely looked up from their grazing. They were peaceful creatures, unconcerned with violence. Hercules began to gather them, moving among them slowly, speaking in low, gentle tones. They followed him easily, trusting, perhaps sensing that he meant them no harm. It was almost too simple, almost peaceful. But then came Eurytion, the herdsman who tended these cattle. He saw Hercules among his charges and ran forward with his staff raised. "Thief!" he cried. "You will not steal the master's cattle again." Hercules felt no anger, only a kind of sadness. Eurytion was brave but foolish, loyal to a master who was himself a monster. The herdsman struck at Hercules with his staff, and Hercules, more in defense than attack, struck back. Eurytion fell beside his beloved dog, and now only silence remained except for the gentle lowing of the cattle and the whisper of wind through the grass. Hercules continued his work, gathering the herd, preparing to drive them back to the Golden Cup. But he knew it could not be this easy. Geryon himself would come. The three-bodied giant would never allow his precious cattle to be taken without a fight. And indeed, as the last light faded from the sky, Geryon came striding across his island. He was a sight both terrible and strange, three warriors fused into one, moving with uncanny coordination. He carried 3 shields, 3 spears, wore 3 helmets. His 6 eyes blazed with fury. His 3 mouths shouted challenges in a voice like thunder rolling across the hills. "Who dares to steal from Geryon?" the giant bellowed. "Who has slain my faithful servants and frightened my cattle? Show yourself, thief, and face the consequences of your crime." Hercules stood forth from among the cattle, calm and ready. "I am Hercules, son of Zeus and Alcmene. I am laboring under the command of King Eurystheus, working to purify myself of past sins. I take no pleasure in theft, but I must bring these cattle to Turns. It is my task, my burden, my path to redemption." Geryon laughed, a terrible sound from 3 throats at once. "Redemption? You speak of redemption while stealing another man's property, while killing his servants. You are a hypocrite and a fool, Hercules. These cattle have grazed on my island since the world was young. They will remain here long after you are dust." Perhaps Geryon was right. Perhaps there was something contradictory, even wrong, in seeking purification through violence and theft. Hercules had thought about this often during his labors. Each task set by Eurystheus seemed designed to test not just his strength but his conscience, and yet he had been given no choice. This was his path, however crooked it might seem. "I do not expect you to understand," Hercules said quietly. "I barely understand it myself, but this is what I must do." And with that, the battle began. Geryon hurled his 3 spears simultaneously, each aimed at a different part of Hercules' body. But Hercules had faced many monsters by now, and his reflexes were honed sharp. He dodged 2 spears and caught the third on his shield, the impact sending a shudder up his arm. Then, in one fluid motion, he drew his bow and nocked an arrow. The arrow flew straight and true, as Hercules' arrows always did. It was dipped in the poisonous blood of the Hydra from his second labor, and when it struck with terrible finality. The arrow pierced through all 3 of Geryon's bodies at once, passing through heart after heart after heart. The giant stood for a moment, his 6 eyes wide with surprise, and then he fell, his 3 bodies collapsing together like a toppled tower. Hercules stood over the fallen giant, breathing heavily. There was no triumph in his heart, only weariness. Another monster slain, another impossible task completed. But at what cost? The island of Erytheia, which had been so peaceful when he arrived, was now marked by death. The cattle lowed nervously, sensing the change in the air. "Forgive me," Hercules said softly, though he did not know if he spoke to Geryon, to the slain dog and herdsman, or to the gods themselves. Then he turned to the practical matter at hand. He had the cattle, but now he had to get them home. The Golden Cup of Helios was too small to carry hundreds of cattle across the ocean. Hercules would have to drive them overland, all the way back across Africa and Europe to Greece. It would be a journey of months, perhaps years, but he had no choice. He gathered the herd and began the long walk home. The journey back was indeed long, but it was not without its own kind of peace. Hercules found a rhythm in the work of herding, in the daily routine of moving the cattle from pasture to pasture, finding water, setting up camp each night. The cattle were gentle creatures, and they grew to trust him. He learned their individual personalities, could recognize them by their markings and their movements. He passed through lands both strange and wonderful, crossed rivers and mountains, walked through forests and across deserts. In some places, people tried to steal the cattle and he had to fight them off. In other places, people offered him hospitality and help and he accepted gratefully. The world, he learned, was full of both kindness and cruelty, often in equal measure. Slowly, gradually, Greece grew closer. The landscapes became more familiar. The language changed from foreign tongues to dialects he recognized, then to his own language. After many months of travel, Hercules drove the red cattle of Geryon through the gates of Turin, where King Eurystheus waited. The king looked at the magnificent herd with wonder and satisfaction. "You have done it again, Hercules," he said. "You have completed another impossible labor. The cattle of Geryon are yours to present." Hercules presented the cattle, and Eurystheus accepted them, though he immediately sacrificed them to Hera, the goddess who had tormented Hercules since birth. It seemed fitting, somehow, that the fruits of such labor should be offered to the divine. The cattle returned to the realm of the sacred, and Hercules was left with only his memories of the journey. 10 labors completed. 2 remained. Hercules looked toward the horizon, wondering what impossible tasks still awaited him, what lands he would still have to cross, what monsters he would still have to face. But for tonight he could rest. For tonight the work was done. And so we leave Hercules here at the end of his 10th labor, weary but unbowed, still walking his long path toward redemption. The cattle of Geryon have been claimed, the journey across land and sea completed. Rest now as Hercules rests, knowing that tomorrow will bring new challenges, but also new opportunities for growth and change. The path is long, but every step brings us closer to home. Sleep well, friend, and dream of distant islands and peaceful herds grazing beneath ancient stars. Until next time.